Dr. Suparna Dasgupta is the co-founder of Oak and Acon, and she's currently based in Sydney. She has close to 2.5 decades of experience in senior leadership roles of managing large operational teams and global transformation projects and programs. She has gained a reputation of having an exceptional understanding of challenges faced by businesses and has helped them with solutions involving digital technologies such as RPA, AI, BPMs, Lean Six Sigma. And if you have only heard of these terms, this is a good session to attend because there is a lot of, as I said, we will try to demystify all these technologies today and try to learn what are the business implications of these technologies for new age marketeers today. So with that, I would hand this over to Suparna. And if you have any questions, I would request if you can hold it till we finish the session, which will go about for about 35 minutes, and then we can take up specific questions. Over to you, Suparna.
Thank you, RP. I will probably start with a statistic. That'll probably be a good starting point for this topic. Do you know that business leaders that have learned and put in practice digital technologies during pandemic are saying that they have accomplished in 10 days what used to take them 10 months? That's quite a telling statement, isn't it? In fact, even before the global health crisis, a survey was conducted by McKinsey where 92% of leaders thought their business model will not remain viable at the rate of digitization pre COVID. The pandemic has put the entire scenario on steroids. It is believed that the companies that are leading the way out of this crisis are the ones that will grab the market share and set the tone and tempo for others. So, evolving into a digital first business is becoming increasingly important for organizations to remain competitive. Various digital levers are being implemented in combination with each other to achieve desired business outcomes and which caters to changing market demands. In many cases, automation, particularly robotic process automation, acts as an accelerator for enterprise adoption of various digital levers at scale. For instance, RPA eases the consumption of AI services by making it easier to act on the data processed by AI. AI even aids data migration and can expand the scope of analytics to include task level analytics. And RPA can help integrate various applications with modern cloud and mobile apps. So automation is becoming more and more important and almost imperative for organizations to remain competitive. Hence, today we are covering the topic on automation and a glimpse into how to start a successful automation journey for any organization. Next slide, please. So, to understand automation in a digital world, I think it's really important to understand the world context and where we stand today. Primarily the world economy, the pandemic, the workforce trends, and what are the emerging trend of digital technologies being adopted by organizations in today's world. Then I'll touch upon the what, why, and how of the automation first era. I will also show you a use case automated by us, Oak and Acorn, that is relevant for all industries. Thereafter, get some time for a discussion. So let's begin. I'm sure we all know how the past year has been. However, let's just recap a bit. Next slide, please. We all have by now come to realize that the future is not what it used to be. This is largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic that has hit all the countries. The IMF has projected alarming economic slowdown around the world. The overall global economy is expected to witness a negative growth, -3% this year, with both advanced and emerging and developing economies taking a massive hit. Some countries going into recession. So, organizations across the world are preparing for what they're calling as the new normal. What does the new normal really mean? So, in the mid 1990s, the death of distance had gained traction. However, now you see more border restrictions, more restrictive visas, and immigration policies. So now distance is back. Businesses will need to plan on how to operate in new ways. Resiliency is needed to absorb the shock. Coming out of it will be the key to survival and long term prosperity. It may move towards a contact free economy. Then, given the government stimuluses that have been rolled out, there is expected to be greater government control and scrutiny. Consumer behaviors are changing rapidly. You can already notice the lasting change to consumer attitudes towards physical distance, health, and privacy. I wish to dwell a bit more on the consumer behaviors, giving the Australian example. Next slide, please. In Australia, COVID 19 has changed consumer behaviors in three broad ways. Anxious consumers have curtailed their spending. Number two, lockdowns have driven greater adoption of digital technologies. And number three, consumers are focusing more on values. So, Australian consumers, for example, are really anxious and careful about their spending. At least 66% are anxious and believe there will be a multi year recession due to this pandemic. About 48% have cut back on all but necessary spending. 18% have struggled to pay their bills since the pandemic. That must be the case with many countries now. So, coronavirus has hastened the transition of the business towards digitization, automation, and mechanization. In addition, not very often talked about, there is another concerning trend that will impact economies, which is slowly unfolding. I am referring about the workforce demography in developed countries. Next slide, please. Take the case of Australia's demography. Its reduced workforce growth has hastened the shift to automation. There was a baby boom in the 1990s. Now we are witnessing a baby bust in 2020s. What is alarming is that the baby boomers are exiting the workforce market much faster as compared to the millennials entering the workforce. Actually, Australia is not that bad. Japan is worse. It has started to go into negative even before 2000. So it is the confluence of coronavirus and the demographic shift all coming together in the 2020s that will and is driving the demand for digital technologies, particularly automation. What does this mean? In the next decade, even without the coronavirus, there is a need to get greater productivity out of the existing workforce. And the way companies can do that is through digital technology and through automation. This was going to happen anyways. However, the double whammy of coronavirus has hastened the requirement for digital technologies and automation in particular. So, with the key economies undergoing severe stress and workforce population growth slowing, let us see what sort of trends have been emerging during the pandemic. Next slide, please. During COVID 19, HFS, which is Horses for Sure Research Organization, they had conducted a survey with about more than 600 enterprises around the world, where they just asked one question: how do you expect COVID 19 to impact your spending for any of the following 10 technology areas? This graph shows the trend. And RPA has been the second biggest pick after cybersecurity, which companies will be increasing their investments in. Why? Because of the scarce resource. People will be needed to work on value added activities as opposed to mundane tasks which can and will be automated. Work like back office, data entry, filling in forms, invoicing, and payout tasks will get automated. There are many more tasks. Those were just, very few examples that I put together. This research reinforces that the pandemic has hastened automation as a critical technology that companies will be willing to spend their budgets on. This survey also indicates that technologies are rapidly changing. You have new technologies like RPA, AI, IoT, blockchain, and many more. Next slide, please. So, if you grew up during the 80s and 90s, you'll probably remember browsing the aisle of your local video store on a Friday night. Video rental stores like Blockbuster were the way that families accessed a wide selection of movies to view at home. Now, with cloud computing, we have dozens of streaming services to browse and watch TV shows and movies. Video stores have mostly disappeared as companies have embraced new technological trends, that provided customers with a more convenient viewing experience. So, we have crossed several technological eras, and all eras have winners and losers. Businesses that adapt to change tend to thrive, and businesses that resist mostly struggles. So just like Blockbuster, strong businesses will get displaced as other forms of non-digital consumption becomes digitized. They will be displaced by businesses that embrace the disruptive emerging technology. So they can offer a service that fits current customer and business requirements. With each new technological era, whether it is the internet era, the mobile era, the cloud era, certain companies invested heavily in new strategies that embraced the technology so they could thrive. Automation is changing the world around us in ways that reshape some of our daily routines. Work is no exception. We are already familiar with automation in the industrial sector. And now the latest is the automation in the knowledge sector. In fact, being able to automate knowledge work is a more viable and scalable enterprise solution. So, RPA is a disruptive technology and it is revolutionizing business. So, we are now embarking on an automation first era and scaling up rapidly. But the question is, why is it happening now? Next slide, please. Technology supporting automation isn't new, but now they are being combined to drive RPA and AI integration. Hence, automation is more feasible now. Also, there are three other factors that is driving automation. Number one, process knowledge is higher than before in businesses. So to outsource, businesses mapped out workflows and tasks, and often for the first time. Number two, vast amount of data are now available for processing because of technological innovations such as low-cost cloud and the explosion of big data. Number three, process automation platforms can now read the screen and interact with the user interface elements due to improved computer vision capabilities. So, with better process mapping, the start of computer vision, and the fast growth of AI, the automation first era is here. So, now the next important question is, how does your business need to adapt? To enter this new era, you need to have the right mindset as leaders. You need to rethink on how your organization needs to work. Next slide, please. An automation first mindset means that companies examine the way the work their team is doing. Organizations determine and segregate tasks that need human involvement and tasks which a robot can perform. Which means if any business process can be automated, it should be definitely automated. If it can be fully automated, it should be fully automated. Or you can have a blend of humans and robots working together. The slide shows how work can be reconstructed in the automated workplace. Tasks exist on a spectrum from human to robot specific work and a variety of combinations between these two extreme poles. Let me give you an example of invoice processing task that is critical in any finance function of an organization. Most companies automate this task using several technologies. You have UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, Python, and it has shown great benefit always and in multiple ways. Next slide, please. Normally, the trigger to automate lies in the business problem. In this case, it is inefficient, not a streamlined task, resulting in errors, duplicate payments, and so on and so forth. This is a simple, however, voluminous task, which is conducted by an SME, and it starts from opening an invoice, reading it, extracting information, inputting and validating details in the ERP system, and closing the task by intimating the manager on a successful registration of the invoice. If there are tasks, for instance, VAT not matching, then it triggers an email seeking advice from the manager on the next step. So you can see that we practically automated the entire process, except for maybe an approval that may be required by a manager and requires a human touch. There have been several benefits when we have automated this task. AHT reduced by approximately 60%, automation throughput is around 75%, no errors, no duplication of payments, hence multiple benefits. So now the next logical question is, how do you determine what needs to be automated in an organization? For that, it is important to examine work both from a top-down and a bottoms-up approach. You can start with a centralized top-down approach, and there are steps that can help you get started with it. You can implement the top-down approach by building a robotic operating center, commonly known as ROC, or you can even call it RPA-COE. Next slide, please. Now, the RPA-COE, they are responsible for conducting few key steps. Number one, they will identify potential automations. And they do that through building heat maps, doing process discovery and planning. And there are several softwares, that can help. Once they have identified potential automations, then they rank the task by time and frequency of occurrence, where you're getting the highest ROI. And then you identify the core jobs to be done and your desired outcomes. So if you automate it, do problems go away? If not, find the most efficient mix of humans and robots. So your automation team should be looking at key processes, identifying which ones are the most time consuming, have the greatest volume, brings the highest ROI, and which are aligned to the organization's strategic goals. So we've talked about the top-down approach and which is centralized. However, that's not enough. The RPA COE gets you to kickstart your automation journey. Now you need to build your automation pipeline enterprise-wide. So to fully succeed, you will also need a bottoms-up approach. This enables your workforce on the ground to identify the parts of their job that can be automated. Remember, they are the SMEs and are in the best position to identify and build your automation pipeline. Next slide. So by democratizing RPA and AI, you are actually harnessing the power of automation to reach the long tail of work that isn't well known to a centralized automation team or the COE. One person's mundane task may not get you a high ROI, but across the enterprise, all the work that becomes automated adds up. Consider the impact if your workforce could free up 20% of their time, by having a robot do the routine work for them. That's the power of an automation first mindset. Then there are processes that are interconnected. For instance, of the 4 processes, automated in a telecom infrastructure organization that I'd led, the first process had tasks and multiple steps that were similar to the other three, which gave higher benefits when combined and did it in less time and less cost. So, the benefits of software robot is that you can program them to do the repetitive and rule based digital tasks, and they perform them better than humans with greater speed, greater accuracy. This frees up people to do the work that robots can't do that as well. That is the thinking and the judgment based task. So, to understand a bottom up approach, consider an SME. So, mostly, SMEs rely on retrieving data from hundreds of documents to make decision on a particular case, which is really a time consuming process. With automation, however, SME can program software robots to scan documents using a glossary of terms. And the robot can speedily pull up the best information for an SME to do the evaluation of the data. And this can be done really very well in, for instance, in a contact center. So this type of knowledge work, retrieving data, manipulating spreadsheets, sorting through and prioritizing emails are all types of automation that a COE might not have an oversight on. And that employees can drive to maximize their time on the task, more demanding of human attention. So this chart that you see actually shows a democratized bottoms up approach, which is complementing a more centralized top down approach in terms of the percentage of organizational tasks each approach can touch. So, this is one example of how automation takes work, typically done solely by humans, shifts the routine part of that work to the robots, and allows the human workers to do less grunt work and more human work. So, now that you have established how to start, you also need to gauge whether your organization has an automation mindset or not. Next slide, please. So, there are some key indicators that demonstrate whether an automation first mindset exists in a company. Number one, it requires every senior executive to have an automation goal and agenda. Number two, the company either has a chief digital officer or a chief automation officer who is accountable for driving enterprise wide automation. Number three, it operates a fully ROC or the COE with a robust automation pipeline that we just talked about. And then number four is obviously a combination of centralized top down approach to automation and an employee led democratic approach. Number five, I find it extremely important. It should aim to improve both operational efficiency and employee experience at the same time. Most often, the employee experience is neglected. Therefore, managing the psychological implications from beginning to end, ensuring that people who want to have a path forward in an organization will have one. So, the organization needs to use a human centric change management approach that ensures that employees feel valued and less anxious and measures engagement and satisfaction of employees working with the software robots. And lastly, but not the least, creates a big bridge that integrates critical IT elements of automation with the business side of the house. So you need to have both the human and robotic components in mind when you are rethinking how you want to look at your business goals. With the above indicators in mind, now you will be able to develop a automation maturity model and see where your company fits within that model. Next slide, please. It naturally begins with the lowest level of maturity, and that is at the starting level where this is the level where most companies they begin. And when the business is in this stage, few business units may independently start an automation proof of concept and then a pilot. The automations are typically created by early adopters within the department who are trained in automating one or more RPA platforms. In today's terms, they're called citizen developers. And the next, so this is the first level. Now, the next level is when you are actually wanting to scale up. So, after the ROI has been established for the robots in the start stage, the business must begin to consolidate automation best practices and have a discussion on scaling. When scaling to hundreds of robots, a mature RPA COE helps organization to standardize automation, build awareness in the organization, and serves as a center for good practices. Security and governance of scaling operations will also be addressed here. So the COE ensures a top-down approach to automation, whereas the business SME can feed the COE with suggested tasks to be automated, ensuring a bottoms-up process is also established. Therefore, thereafter, so once now the scaling maturity is done, the organization then can mature to what is referred to as a transforming maturity level. This happens when a company has standardized automation process and laid measures to ensure governance and security over automation via the COE, and the mundane task has been shifted to the robots. But most importantly, robots have been distributed across the organization to help employees choose their own work to automate. This is where your organization actually begins to transform. The leaders have an automation first mindset and are encouraging all employees to consider how robots can improve their day to day task. In this stage, the COE will act as a guardian of automation monitoring, deployment best practices, serving as a communication center, deploying and monitoring automations generated by the business users. So, the most matured stage now, which is the final one, which is really an aspirational phase. So the gigabot economy is what it is known as, and it is a workforce where humans and robots they work together independently across organizational borders. In this phase, you'll see robots from one organization able to communicate with robots from another organization, playing an active role in the global supply chain. For example, the robots in an insurance company accounts payable can work directly with the robots in an auto parts supplier handling accounts receivable department to process and pay the invoices on their own. So in my experience, there are two broad set of good practices that needs to be embedded: the cultural mindset and the operational readiness in order to build a successful automation practice. Next slide, please. I believe that the cultural mindset is a much more difficult task than building the operational practice. And if you get it wrong, it can actually go terribly south. This needs to be very carefully executed, keeping employees and leaders at the heart of the planning process. The organization needs to have a very strong change management approach and plan, with few critical elements embedded in the plan. So, number one is really driving change in the mindset. So, the mindset really needs to be an outcome oriented mindset. Leaders should examine the most effective mix of humans and robots in order to best meet those outcomes. Jobs to be done should drive automation and avoid automation for the sake of automation. So you can actually do that by identifying the business key goals, utilize the right kind of automation tools, and partner resources to determine the best processes to automate and determine the robot human mix that will deliver ROI for these processes. The next one, which is a very, very useful and a very critical one, is to build awareness. Building awareness and setting the right tone for both target groups, whether it is the leadership and the employees, can generate enthusiasm, accelerate your automation journey, ensure buy in, and prevent potential rejection of the automation technology or even an automation anxiety. So typically, we've done proof of concepts and ROIs, we've created videos and infographic reading material to demonstrate benefits. You can actually get a change manager or an agent who will carefully craft the communication plan. The communication itself will be delivered, and you'll ensure details are communicated at the right time to the right audience and the right messaging. I have personally relied heavily on the sponsor to evangelize automation. The third one is to build a bridge between IT and business stakeholders. Automation should be led by both business and IT. Business units will provide you unique sites into the process, and IT provides infrastructure, governance, and other necessary solutions. I've learned it the hard way. While setting up the first automation COE, while I had engaged the business proactively, the IT was slightly neglected. And that really posed significant problems subsequently. That was a big learning for me personally. So build awareness with amongst your leadership. They are really crucial in breaking down organizational silos. Build awareness with business units and IT application managers to set the tone and socialize automation in a way that will encourage cooperation. Engage with all leadership. Engaged leadership really plays a decisive role in an automation first mindset. When leadership understands, they accelerate and improve the process. Leaders generate pipeline, bridge silos, facilitate a successful COE. Show them a POC, a video of automation, and make the case of how automation is part of the solution to save money, reduce cost, reduce risk, ensure compliance, and reach organizational goals. The last one is really never stop learning. Once one process has been automated, another can benefit from that. Having a centralized unit where experiences are documented and shared, it reduces duplicate work and enhances the speed and success of an RPA deployment. So you can maintain a centralized or even a semi-centralized documentation of automation deployments and store them within your COE. Take advantage of knowledge that you're getting externally. Various product companies have got their academies online on how to automate, and there are plenty of them online. So, therefore, it is very important to evangelize automation to get a higher adoption across the board, both leaders and employees. Now, let us look at how to get the operational practice in place. We have discussed few already, however, worth recapping and consolidating. Next slide, please. So the first one that I have talked about is to establish an ROC or a robotic operation center or a COE. So you need to have a formalized central unit that can facilitate the development, testing, and deployment of your robots to save money and free up staff to do more value-added work. Your COE will be central in scaling automation to help your business thrive. The second one is identifying the right process to automate. So your first automation should be really simple and yet bring about tangible benefits. In a financial services organization where I was given the task to build the RPA COE, we started with two proof of concepts, a shared service one in the finance and accounting, and a core business process, which was in the life insurance area. So that showcased that automation can be done across the enterprise, provided the processes fit the automation criteria. It also showcased an impact on both top line and bottom line of the organization. Now, after the pilot phase, you're faced with the question, what next? In order to scale, you must generate a healthy pipeline of ideas for future automation, which can later be prioritized by your COE to ensure they meet standards and link up with organizational goals. You can actually train business analysts to find the most suitable processes that are well documented. Look for highly repetitive computer-based processes. If business units have gone through business process management or lean transformation, these are really good places to start with. For example, in a large public sector telecom infrastructure company, one of my key tasks was to hire or build automation capabilities within the automation delivery center being set up in the operational excellence team. So, whilst I had hired seasoned developers, the advantage here was that few of the BPM members could be easily trained to be a business analyst and even do a project manager role. It proved to be very advantageous since they already had the continuous improvement mindset. They were good at process mapping, eye for waste elimination, and they had a very structured approach to dealing with the problem. It cut down time to hire, and they were aware of the organization's culture, strategy, and people, both leadership and teams. The third one, a very important one, governance, structure, and security compliance. As your business automation journey starts, it's essential to determine how you prioritize automation requests and how those can link the automation with ROI. Having a good governance ensures business units comply with company policies, avoid duplication, and can accelerate automation. Bring business and IT stakeholders together to discuss your business goals and objectives. The COE acts as a central point for stakeholders involved in decision making and creating policies surrounding governance. Work with IT, risk, and security teams to ensure user controls and security compliances are in place. Empower your employee led bottoms of automation. So, citizen developers are employees who are trained in determining what to automate quickly without a lot of overhead, creating a healthy automation pipeline. And lastly, harness the skill and expertise of others. The best scaled up automation sometimes requires external expertise. When an organization needs help, extra help, use implementation partners that can train your team, provide technological solution, and ensure automation success. So finally, I wish to leave you all with few critical viewpoints to seriously consider as I wrap up this session today. Next slide, please. In the new normal, digital technologies are becoming imperative for survival, building resiliency, and sustainability. And automation is the preferred technology by companies as it acts as an accelerator for other technologies and provides several tangible benefits. The success of an RPA implementation can be determined based on a high adoption by every employee in the organization. Hence, leaders need to drive an automation cultural mindset within the organization. Sorry. So automation is here to stay, and as leaders, please do not ignore it. Rather, embrace it. Well, I wish to thank RP, Cinfluencer founder, for giving me this opportunity to speak on what I'm not only passionate about, but also feel is a very important topic that I need to share my knowledge and experiences. I'm happy to discuss with individuals who wish to understand more on this topic. My email is given in the meeting invite. You may wish to browse our website as well, which is www.oakanaconconsulting.com in case you wish to know what services we provide. Um, there is the other co-founder, Amit Das Gupta, also in the meeting today. And we are a small digital consulting firm. We also conduct skill development trainings. Um, so thank you for your time and patience. Now I'll hand it over to RP for him to take the session forward.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Suparna. I think uh, very insightful session for me personally. And before anyone else asks any question, I have a very different kind of a question. You know, I'm going back to maybe 20, 30 years back, where general automation would lead to labor unrest in industrial setups, for example. You know, we saw what happened to computerization as a whole, you know. Have you, in your experience, have you encountered similar experiences of backlash in corporate setups also, of people not waking up to the fact that automation is required or automation should be done? Can you share some of those experiences?
Absolutely, RP. I think this is one of the biggest problem that I have faced in almost all organizations. And I have faced it across two levels. One is at the leadership level, and one is at the employee level, at the ground level, where there are team members. And they sort of differ in the anxiety that they have. So the at the ground level, the anxiousness is around that I'm going to lose my job. So that's the automation anxiety that they have, right? And at the leadership level, there are two things that I feel, um, which is why the leadership level is also not very much tuned to automation. One is the lack of awareness. It's a new technology, and the leadership is not aware of how it works. And the best way, that's why I said, was the best way is to do a small proof of concept. And that really helps leaders to understand what kind of benefits that they're getting. See, for everyone, it's the biggest thing that you want to actually tell them is what I call it as the WIIFM. What's in it for me? So for a leader, it's a different, it's a different kind of a thinking. That leader will have the target of cost reduction, maybe operational efficiency, but the employees will have, should I still be keeping my job? So this is the fear that I have seen. But when you have a very big change management plan along with it, where you're trying to drive the implementation of automation alongside and with the help of the leaders and employees, then it goes away. I mean, think about a time when computers came into play. Even at that time, we thought we were going to lose jobs, but actually, there were more jobs, and that's going to happen even for this here. So for instance, it's, most often people think that if you need to automate, you just need developers, and that's going to be enough. That's not the case. You need business expertise, because it is business that is going to help you to understand which are the processes. You need a change manager, you need a project manager, there are different roles that are going to come by. And so it is, I think it's going to take a bit of time, as you kind of, as um, even the employees start to work alongside a robot, they get a lot more comfortable. And then it starts to kind of ease out, and they become a lot more interested. On the contrary, they want to know, how can I start to automate?
Sure, sure. Thank you very much. I'll open it up to anyone else who may have a question. Yeah, Vic, please go ahead.
Yes, Suparna, this was really, really interesting, because my background has largely been manufacturing. Okay, I've spent many years in the automotive and the oil and gas space. And as RP correctly said, automation, and though the industry may be automotive, but automation has always had its typical fears and anxieties, both in the shop floor as well as even for all the white collared workers. Now, given your experience, uh, which is the key function apart from the leadership, apart from the top management, which is the key function that actually needs to go out and demystify, and also break down these mental barriers and mental anxieties that automation or the very talk of robotics brings, say, onto a shop floor?
Very good question, Arik. So my suggestion would be that build a center of excellence where and actually what's happening now is that a lot of companies are looking at what they are referring to as a connected digital strategy. which means that it's not just automation, but they're looking at AI, they're looking at IoT and blockchain, et cetera, and how they're combining together, and then how well they can digitize the entire organization for various reasons. Now, you can either have a digital center of excellence, or you can have a RPA, or a lot of time people are referring it to as intelligent process automation as well, where there is a combination of AI also. So when you set up that RPA COE, and the head of the RPA COE or your CDO, maybe your chief digital officer, is the person who should be the evangelist to actually start to create that awareness across. So I was working with AXA, and the remit for my role was RPA COE, and it was very, very new at that point in time. And awareness was very less. So what we began was to actually start the COE in terms of trying to put obviously a 5-year strategy in place, trying to understand what kind of tools we are going to do. And then the biggest one was to create the awareness across the leadership, as well as the employees. So an RPA COE will be able to. They should be a set kind of people who should be responsible just for creating the awareness. It's a really, really important task, and keep it. A lot of times when people talk about technology, they try to talk in a very technical language, try to make it very complex, and people get scared. The business side or the leaders get scared. Keep it very simple. I mean, how can you? The best way is to actually educate or create awareness amongst people to make a technical a very non-technical one. And nowadays, automation is becoming so simple with low code, and even uh, I have also tried to build a bot myself. I'm not good at it at all, believe me, but I just wanted to see how it sort of works. It's as simple as that. And so, keep it simple, keep talking about it, and have a COE.
Okay, a following question to that, which is, theoretically, automation and robotics, AI, ML, this all looks very good in economies where, population and unemployment, and also levels of education are not really issues. The state has taken care of it, society has taken care of it. Now, in a country like India, where unemployment is right now definitely above double digits, okay, and we actually end up having one of the youngest populations in the world. I mean, close to 50% of our population is below 25 years of age. Okay, again, you'll have enough Luddites in the society who'll go across and will want to break up any kind of automation and robotics that there are. But then, which are the sectors or which are the industries, according to you, which can actually be the torchbearers of this concept? Like they go out and they prove it to people, as you said, that automation can actually lead to higher skills and better jobs and better prospects and greater
Yeah.
prosperity than typically this narrative of losing jobs and therefore the rise of unionism. I mean, being a Bengali, I've read tomes and tomes about what happened in the 1970s and the 1980s of how business went out of Bengal, okay, because of rampant and I would say rudderless unionism. So which are the key sectors, according to you, in a country like India, which can actually be the torchbearers of automation?
Well, actually, Avik, how it started is mostly it started really in the financial services, because banks, for instance, wanted to have automation, because one was that they wanted to have a better customer experience. It's so competitive in the banking right now, right? And or they wanted to reduce their cost. Then it went on to the insurance companies. and then it went on to utility, etc. So you see the pattern is more around, if it's a customer facing industry, you really start very well with it. But actually, you can automate across any and every sector. And for instance, Amit and myself, we recently actually automated, we built an MVP for an engineering company. It's a large EPC company, and they wanted to get their pre sales work automated because a lot of their engineers were actually spending a lot of their time, looking at various subcontractor RFP, responses that were given, and they were utilizing a lot of their time rather than more in negotiation. So actually, that's how it has started. And now, actually, even the government sector in Australia, automation is really high now in all the government sectors. What they're trying to do, think about it. There is a particular government organization which has about 90 departments across Australia. 90 departments having 90 finance and accounting teams, having 90 HR teams, 90. They're all wanting to automate and consolidate and skill up people to do that. So India is looked at from a technology standpoint really good in terms of skills of people who are way more better in digital technologies and especially automation. So a lot of times in Australia, you are actually wanting to get people from India to automate things for you. So in that sense, India is, kind of in an advantageous position, because out here, for instance, to get a developer is really costly and you don't get them. You get a lot more in India, and really good ones.
Thank you very much, Suparna.
Thanks, Suparna. So
Maybe I'll go for another question very quickly. Arti, do we have the time now?
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right, thanks. So, Suparna, really nice, discussions we have had today, and thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. One question, because I am also very closely associated with the automation industry, and like Avik, into manufacturing, I'm more from the B2B side and manufacturing, where we supply and give a lot of automation solutions and digital solutions overall. My question would be, when we look into implementation, the customers typically ask for ROI, return on my investment. What's, like you said, what's in it for me? So generally, these digital use cases do not come with, a very lucrative ROI, because, like you said, we have to start with the proof of concept, and we have to create the center of excellence. Now, how do we solve this dilemma? One way is to, like you said, we have to have the thought process at the leadership level. Do you feel that it also depends on the vision and mission of the organization in terms of how digital they want to go, and the kind of policies they create to upskill and reskill the resources in the organization, including creation of HR policies that makes relevant sense? Do you think this is also an important aspect to automation and digitization?
Piyush, you've really hit the nail. It has to be at a strategic level, which includes people, process, and technology. Automation in, when you're doing a proof of concept, that is just a small, tiny bit in the ocean that you're about to start with. Because it's like when you're showing a person a 6-minute task can be done in 40 seconds. It's like, wow, so you want that wow factor for the leadership. But in reality, that's not enough. In fact, a lot of organizations now, what they're looking at is to build the entire strategy. And they're looking at it from an 80,000 feet level to say, okay, automation is one component, the others are this. This is what my goal and my vision is. These are my targets, and these are the digital levers that I'm actually going to use. Not very many organizations have really, kind of worked around that in that sense. I can give you again the Australia example. A lot of people are now looking at, so one is, automating, but actually trying to understand what the organization is at the as is level, because every department works on their own. The left doesn't know what the right is doing. So you need to have a consolidated 360-degree view. Once you get that, then you kind of do the assessment in terms of what are the different technology levers that I'm going to, work on. And that is the thing that's happening out here in Australia. A lot of new tools and technology is being created to actually assess the current, as is of the organization, basically. And this is across people, process, and technology. So it will involve HR, it will involve IT, it will involve, your strategy, your customer experience, the CX team, everybody now.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Suparna.
Thanks, Suparna. Thank you, Piyush. If there is no other question, since we are almost 2 minutes past 2 in Singapore, so we can wrap this up now. I am assuming there is no more question. Great. So, Suparna, huge bunch of thanks to you. This was our first one, and I'm sure we will do a lot many like these. We are just starting, and we hope to get you again sometime soon to discuss more of these things, because as I said, we are just starting today. I'm sure the concepts or the overview to concepts that we have discussed today is just tip of the iceberg, and there is much more to it. So we'll come back to you to seek your guidance once again. For now, thank you very much. And thank you everyone, Akira, Avik, Amit, Piyush, and some other guys who have already left. So we'll also share this entire recording on our Cinfluencers LinkedIn page for others to, make benefits out of this great discussion. So till next time, it's bye-bye from Singapore. See you next time.
Thank you very much,
everyone.
Arvind.
Thanks a lot for this.
Thanks
Stay
very
safe.
much.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.